Greetings and welcome to the Gaming Codex, the show where I try to explain to you all the various terms used within the video games industry and when it comes to gaming in general. On today's edition we have mods, which is not an actual word but an abbreviation for modifications. And what would that mean? Well, the general definition says that a mod, short for modification of course, is an alteration where someone, usually a player, takes the code of a video game and changes it. Mods may range from small changes and simple tweaks to completely new games made within a video game. And there's one slight caveat to this: the definition says code, but you can change anything about the game, not just the code. You can only change the textures, for example. You can add more filters, more effects, more things that don't actually require you to code anything or change a line of, well, you actually can't change a line of code in most games because they're not open software, they're not free software. And by free, I don't mean you don't pay for them, I mean you know what they are, like you can see the source and they don't have DRM, and basically listen to what Stallman has to say about it. Mods, one of the greatest innovations ever conceived. This is something that can potentially create limitless content for a video game. Limitless, well, potentially limitless. Limitless as long as there are people willing to make content for that game for free. If you as a player look at your favorite game and think to yourself, you know, if I could have the ability to change something, I would, I don't know, make this weapon shoot faster, or I would add one more level, or I would add one more enemy, or I would add one more completely new campaign with its own characters, its own storyline, its own everything. And people do that. People do that for free constantly. Why, you may ask? Well, why wouldn't you? You have the ability to change something in your favorite game and you do it. You impart a bit of you into that game and then you get to share it with everyone that has that game. You not only, well, presumably have fun while you're making it, but you also gain skills that will help you if you ever decide to become a full-time game developer. And if you make a really neat mod, the developers themselves may actually take up interest in your work and maybe hire you. People have been hired at gaming companies based solely on mods. There are even companies such as BioWare, for example, that have a component to their hiring process which involves the potential candidates making a mod in the Neverwinter Nights engine. Or at least they did have at one time, and it was a neat idea. I mean, you actually get to recruit people that know how this stuff works, how a game flows, how things should be done. And mods do fall into many categories. There's graphics mods that make a game look better, there's sound mods that make it sound better, there's gameplay mods that add more gameplay, more abilities, more options to deal with things, there's AI mods which make the computer think better, there's campaigns, like I've said, there are multiplayer modes added to games that don't have one. For example, like the best example possible is San Andreas multiplayer. In some ways it's still a bit ahead of its time even compared with GTA 5's online mode. And then there's total conversions, which is the other video game within a video game that the definition mentioned. Stuff like Counter-Strike, which is a completely different game to Half-Life. Stuff like Killing Floor, which is a completely different game to Unreal Tournament. Stuff like Dear Esther, which is not actually a game. And just because something is a mod doesn't mean that it's made by amateurs. Well, yeah, it sometimes does mean it's made by amateurs, but it doesn't mean that it's something of low quality. Quite the contrary, some people do put a lot of time and effort and skill into creating finely crafted mods that are a must for every fan of a certain game. Again, Counter-Strike. Now, what would be the popular definition of mods? Well, that is free stuff, like it is, just free stuff. You get more stuff for your game for free. And that can sometimes be a bit difficult when the people that actually make mods want to, you know, maybe earn a living by making these mods. I mean, they already do them as a job, basically. They spend untold hours a day crafting them. They should be paid for them. So when you tell people, you know, you think you could maybe chip in a few bucks to pay for this mod so I can keep on making more, people will sometimes go ballistic. Though to be fair, the last time it happened with Skyrim, Bethesda was basically taking half the money, half of it. Well, sure, they made the base game and they made the toolkit, but still half of it. For a game that requires an interface overhaul to not cause most players to hurl chunks, or barf if you want to be more polite, or not. Should mod developers be paid? Well, some of them, yeah. Should there be a more direct and more less obfuscated, less 4 years into the availability of a game on the market for the developer and Valve to go in and say, hey, surprise, everything you got for free now is now paid, cough up the dough? Absolutely. It should be made in a method that's not that ham-fisted, which is why a lot of mod developers have their own Patreon account where they allow people to finance their development, because selling them directly is a bit of a no-no with the publisher and the developer, and they don't like it. Speaking of which, what is the marketing definition of mods? Well, that depends. One of them is the absolute enemy if we sell crappy DLC. Because let's face it, if you're Electronic Arts or Activision and you sell $15 map packs for Battlefield and for Call of Duty, you know, map packs, right? Maps that people used to make for free in their spare time and they used to be amazing. Yeah, if you do shit like that, sorry again, this video is gonna get demonetized, but I cannot help myself, you're gonna be against mods. You're not gonna support mods, you're gonna actively discourage them. Like the developers of Arma 3 said, if DICE wanted Bohemia to go out of business, they would have made Battlefield moddable. And they're kinda right. I mean, if you have something with Battlefield's number of players and the ability to mod their game, which is something they haven't had, what, in a decade? More than a decade? Ages untold? You would have something that could probably be even bigger than DayZ was. Not that DayZ was ever finished, but its impact is still being felt. We're still in this survival, open world, battle royale kind of craze. And it was because of a mod. But if you don't produce crappy DLC, then comes definition number 2. Mods are content we don't have to pay for. Content that people will make for free for our game, so our game keeps selling even though we haven't touched it in years. It'll keep selling because people are making new things for it and we don't have to. Though again, there is a bit of a double-edged sword here, because if the developer does decide to make more content, they'll have to make really good content. Where Bethesda went the route of making expansions instead of DLC for Fallout and for Skyrim. And CD Projekt made The Witcher 4, which is basically what Blood and Wine actually was. And they have nothing against mods. They love them. Mods fix issues, improve the game, it solidifies the community. It's a wondrous thing. So closes this chapter of the Gaming Codex. Come back next time when we will talk about something completely different.